How did you get into comics?
All right, so I got into comics kind of weird, at least in my opinion. I grew up in a small town called Benton Harbor, Michigan, and we really didn't have a lot of exposure to a lot of stuff that people take for granted. Comic books being one of them, and my mom ended up moving to South Bend, Indiana, and a friend of mine had the first Ninja Turtles I've ever been exposed to. Before they came out big time, but it was the indie books that were collected into a graphic novel by Eastman and Laird, and that blew my mind. Like I had never knew. It's hard to quantify, but it's like seeing a new medium. It's like somebody showed you a cartoon and you had never. It's like, what is these moving pictures? Oh my God! And so I had always wanted to make films, and comic books seemed to be like the easiest way at that point to tell the stories that are, locked in a young creative's head. I mean, it's all gobbledygook, it's just werewolves and people with guns and all that stuff. But at the time, I thought I was an auteur, and comic books was like the least path of least resistance anyway to make the stuff I wanted to make.
I love it, man. Yeah. And what point did you start doing art? So you were a fan of the comic book mediums after
right then and there. As soon as I started a Turtles book, like I said, I wanted to make movies, but I was I sketched around here. I was just as terrible as any other kid. I think I was 11 years old.
Wow.
And up until that point, I never had no like, oh, I'm gonna be an artist. It was just like I was like, oh man, this is what I want to do. I didn't know this was a thing you could do. And obviously, I started drawing my own Turtles comics, and I drew so many pages of it, and I was obsessed. And then eventually, I created my own character called the Cat, which is pretty much a cat version of the Ninja Turtles. And I like westerns too, so he was like a gunslinging cat. I probably could sell that idea today if I polished it up. But
you saw Yojimbo made it into the TMNT cartoon.
Actually, that was definitely one of my like that. Obviously, you go from Turtles to Yojimbo to. Trying to think what else was out at the time. The Crow. It was a lot of black and white stuff, indie stuff that really influenced my style. Actually, which leads to Nathaniel. That's why Nathaniel was a perfect fit because it's like Daniel was pretty much like a solo Ninja Turtle, if you ask me.
Yeah,
same kind of difference. Yeah, see,
I've never heard that.
Yeah. You never thought of that.
We've never even talked about it.
Never thought about that.
That's fun.
Yep.
And from that point, like, how did you decide? Okay, this is something I want to do professionally. So you grew up, you kept doing art. And at what point were you like, okay, this is going to be like a career for me?
Well, I had a false start at 21. This kind of dovetails into the low point where I went to my first Comic-Con. I think I was like, I was 21. And I showed, I think I might have been 20. I showed an artist my stuff, and I knew, I was like, hey, here he goes, man. This is my ticket into big time. I'm nervous. I'm like, all right, they're going to sell how great I am, and I'm in. And of course, it didn't go that way. Obviously, he tore me down and tell me, everything. And he was nice about it. Like, he could have probably said it in the nicest way possible. My ego still was bruised to the core just because, you're a young, arrogant artist. And so I actually stopped drawing for like 5 years, and I didn't pick it back up again until, I think I was like 20, 25, 26. But I also couldn't draw in the same style. So that 19-year-old, 20-year-old me was still drawing in the Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld era comics. And then new school me was drawing in this kind of new image boom. So Ryan Otley and, all those image books that were coming out were my newer influence. So I was still reading comics. I just wasn't drawing. Like I had kind of hung it up. I had got married at 21. And so I felt like, as a childish hobby, I got to put this away and become a man. I worked factory jobs, went to the military. I went on an odyssey, came right back into comic books, at 28 is when I decided to make a real go of it. I had been drawing again for 3 years and developed a more cartoony style that happened to be marketable. So, I took it back to Comic-Con and tried it out. And it was, I think I made $670-something, which was just a little shy of what I made in a week at my job. So like that intoxicated me. Like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing. Now, if I can make this better, this is the low point, then I can build.
What was your first Comic-Con you went to?
It was Wizard World Chicago.
I think that was my first show too.
Yeah. This was many years ago, and it was back then. I mean, not to put them down if they're watching this, but it was humongous. It was like a big deal back then. They still had Marvel and DC industry guys showing up, and it was one of the only shows somebody from the Midwest that didn't get out to travel much could see the industry people at the show. And I was set up at a little 6-foot artist alley table, and I had a comic book called The What that I had created. Me and a buddy of mine, Alan Shell, he did the story, I did the artwork, and nobody was buying it. So I like pushed it aside and put out a little sign I drew and said on the sign it says I'll draw anything with custom art. I'll draw anything within reason, and because people ask you for crazy shit. So then after that, that's when people start like, oh, I want Captain America doing this, and I do got a funny story with within reason. Before I put that, I had somebody ask me for Batman giving Robin a bath. That's what I know. I didn't know like how weird Comic-Con people could get. I was like, what? And they were like, no, just do it. Like they only did it because I put I'll draw anything you want. So you had the one jackass guy. He paid for it though.
Yeah. And you're like,
I want Batman giving Robin a bath, and I drew it. I made it funny. It was more of a comedy deal than it was. It was nothing showing or nothing. But anyway, that was my first Comic-Con right there. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
So you went through and all of a sudden you realized that selling those comic books that you created weren't as profitable to you as selling custom artwork.
No, not at all. And it was a year's stutter step between that and when I came back with Prince, maybe a year and some change later, same show, because it was within driving distance. Why I keep coming back to Chicago. I'm like 80 miles away, and that was the biggest show in my region, and next to a show that's slightly further away in Detroit. So I had come up with a series of prints. They were all busts, kind of like cut off at the waist. And I just did what I knew, Marvel, DC, and did all right. Made what I considered decent money at the time. But it wasn't until like 2011, which is when pretty much my life changed. But that also dovetails into like something you brought up before, as like when was I ready to give up? I was ready to give up in 2010. Like I had 3 kids. Actually, I just had another kid, so this is my 4th kid, and my wife of 20-something years now, but. At that time, the money was okay, but it's like, once again, maybe I got to be more responsible. And I had made a few bad financial moves business-wise with the comic book stuff where I lost money big time going the other way. Mm-hmm. And I was ready to hang it up. And it was winter or December. It's all dramatic, Shakespearean. And I had a client freelance me for about $8,000 worth of work from Australia. And that, like, kind of like, all right, okay, I can live to fight another day, but if I do this again next year, I'm going to revamp everything.
Yeah.
And that's where the headshots came along, the symmetrical look and all that. I like revamped everything, spent all winter redrawing all my artwork, and I had really got excited about the headshots. I loved them. I thought they were cool. So then in January, the first show came up, and then we hit like a benchmark, like financial success. We were like, holy crap! I didn't even believe any of that year. Like every year, each show, we're jumping up from making what would be like $1,200. Now we're making, I think I made like $4K at one show. Then it was up to $55K, and then $6K, $8K, $10K. I'm like, whoa! And there's a correlation with that. It's not because I'm a great artist or I'm a genius, because the first Avengers came out. And so that's 2011 is exactly when the Comic-Con boom hit.
Yeah.
And I had the right product at the right time. Accidental. Like, who knew? Who would have bet on Avengers having a paradigm shift in the industry? I didn't, but that's what helped me out.